Everybody enjoying the conference so far? Yes. Yay, sweet. All right. With that, I want to introduce everybody to the topic of what we're going to cover today. So for the next couple of rambling 50 so minutes or so, we're going to talk about enterprise security architecture and how doing security theater, what it's actually costing us as security professionals. Now, real quick, anybody here in here an actual security architect? We got two down here. Yay. Do you know that there are fewer security architects in the world than those who have actually crested Mount Everest? I found that out in some of my research. All right, let's go ahead and get on. Had to get in here. So, general. It looks like my slide advancer is not working. What other technical issues are we going to face this morning? Who wants to take the over and under on whether or not my mic goes out of whack? Come on. See if I can beat this into submission. All right, so everything I'm going to share with you today, it's an introduction to enterprise security architecture. It's based upon the FESA framework that we designed at the Rubicon Advisory Group, and it wasn't just me. I tapped a number of different people because I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be the Ed show. But before you do anything, do the adult thing, get adult supervision. I'm often left without it, so I come up with weird things that occur. So a little bit about myself. This is pre-pandemic, by the way, that picture. After moving down from Columbus, Ohio to Kentucky, I kind of went native, and surprisingly, my wife actually enjoyed it. I have been in this industry for going on 3.5 decades, which makes me legacy, but not end of life yet. So some of the things that we're going to cover today is, as we're going through this, we're going to cover 8 sections in roughly less than 50 minutes. FYI, for those of you who want to know, I've had 27 cups of caffeine this morning, and I will have a tendency to speak really, really fast. But we're going to cover some of the things about why we still need architecture all the way through some of the red flags that we've seen inside of our organizations. Now, most of us have inherited somebody else's decisions, right? When my wife found the house of her dreams in rural Meade, Kentucky, it was a Queen Anne. It's over 140 years old. It is the personification of our industry. I found myself asking a lot of questions like, what were they thinking? Why is nothing up to standard? I would start one project only to find that there were 17 other projects that needed to be done prior to that. She only wanted stuff to work, and if I had a budget, kiss it goodbye. So again, we're talking about the necessity to connect what we do in information systems and security, what we do in information technology, back to supporting the business. Historically, IT security, we've been the shop of no or failing to deliver. We want to be able to show that we are providing value to the organization. This is one of the things that drove us to develop the FESA framework. Personally, I got sick of responding to incidents where I would ask questions like, what data is on this? And people would go, I don't know. What systems does it have access to? We don't know. What service function does it provide your organization? I don't know. That's frustrating. I'd had that happen on incidents, digital transformation, and from people who claimed and touted to be architects. Now, this is not just the Ed show. There are a number of other individuals that I reached out to that I've made contacts with, I've become friends with, that I said, hey, take a look at this and tell me if I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, poke me in the eye. Tell me where I'm at, and we'll move from there. These are folks that are in different aspects of our industry, from CISOs and consultants, all the way to folks that are breaking and entering, incident responders, system administrators, you name it, they're in various roles. They helped put this together. So it wasn't just me. I just got the fun-filled part of putting the bulk of it together and trying to herd cats. It was not fun. So again, understanding that the pain we feel is real, and understanding, do we even still need architecture? We live in a day of cloud-based systems, and we can just go into a web console and put things together. And as it turns out, that doesn't always work well, does it? How many of you have ever had a cloud delivery go well? A lot of the times, as I mentioned, a lot of the problems that I was getting, not only from the folks in technology, but from the business, was, hey, we're spending a lot of money. Are we better? Why wasn't this system able to talk to this system? Well, when you throw things against the wall, it doesn't necessarily work. If you don't have a strategy, how do you know what to execute against? Right? You can get all these best-of-breed things, but if they don't work and provide you a capability and a new service within the organization, why do you have them? Because it's a new Blinky box, and the vendor said over a 3-martini lunch that I needed one? That's the wrong answer. So, what's the worst that can happen for not having an architecture? I love some of the things that I see in the physical world that actually translate. And again, I like to take pictures, so when I see something, I definitely give it, like, can I use this at some point in my life? The answer is yes. I love this one, the fire hydrant behind the things. I think this was on seat.com, so if you wanted to go to the next Taylor Swift, this is like the best seat in the house, I heard. We know historically, without solid architecture and accounting for what is the current state, and being able to plan for the future or the threats we face can lead to terrible things. Most of us hopefully have heard about Galloping Gertie. The Tacoma Bridge, little windstorm popped up, shredded the bridge, totally destroyed it. If we don't come up with a solid solution, it's a Band-Aid approach to life. Is anybody okay getting on this plane with the duct tape, keeping the wing in line? I am afraid of flying. So the answer is no. Because we know that the Band-Aid solution, the Band-Aid fix becomes the production issue down the road. Now, normally when it comes to our networks, like I mentioned, a lot of us have inherited things from other people. Normally I used to say that our networks were like this. They were like pancakes. After much consideration, I think they're more like crepes. They're getting flatter and flatter. But then we start doing things like adding and bolting on after the fact, after a service has run out, after we've deployed an architecture, and we just start adding things on, right? Because adding things on and bolting it on after the fact, that works. Anybody want to go to Denny's? Again, when we talk about adding in all these extra stuff, yes, it may look good on the outside. I'm an Iowa farm boy, so when I start seeing people add things on, I'm looking at it like throwing mud against a brick wall. We're just throwing things and hoping something sticks. And yes, that's mud. Might be mud from a bull, but it's mud. Maybe cow pies. So I don't want you thinking that this is all about shaming your current setup, because again, we know that when we start a new position or we take over, we're getting something that somebody else designed. It's about recognizing that there's a better way than constantly having to patch holes on a sinking ship, right? However, changing an organization's culture sometimes can be like trying to change the direction of the Titanic by beating on the bow with a 2x4. Yes, you can do it eventually, enough time and effort, it is possible, but it's not going to change the outcome. We don't want to continue having the same issues. Let's be honest, many of us know in the security industry, it's a parade of vendors that are vying for our time and taking up our time. You know, they're going to tell you about their magic or silver bullet or their turnkey solution that's going to solve all your problems. right? How many of you have had vendors that have promised you the world? And they've delivered too, right? This is, I think, one of our biggest problems in our industries is that we have too many blinky boxes in our environment that nobody can actually understand. We have too many tools that are being brought in. We get, 10,000 alerts a day. That's great. 9,998 of them are going to get ignored. When we look at getting overwhelmed with the amount of background data that we're always getting, these solutions, while they may sound good in the Gartner Magic Cube, do they actually solve a problem for you? Or are they just introducing additional noise and not any real new capability? Having product overload. This is one of the areas. How many of you have ever walked into an organization and you find out they have like 3 different solutions that provide the same thing and nobody realized that they already had that capability? That should never happen. We often confuse visibility and security as being one and the same thing, and now that we've spent a ton, we still get ransomwared, right? Or we get phished, or somebody opens up a Word document that has embedded maliciousness. Or my favorite, Dave in Finance receives that file that's like hpportal.exe and clicks on it anyways. Being overwhelmed is one of the things. Too many blinky boxes in the organization. Framework fatigue. This is a real thing. Oh my goodness. Every new NIST update that comes out, every ISO standard, and I use the term interpretation loosely here, with regards to PCI DSS, leads us to have issues struggling with it. Being able to make sure that we are addressing audits requirements. Then we start falling into this habit that if the auditor says something, that's what we have to respond to. And it is true, findings get funding, but if your threat model is the auditor, we're doing it wrong, aren't we? I actually like working with auditors. Let them tell me where we need to strengthen and improve at. The other aspect is, does the framework make sense? Or did the organization just attempt to carte blanche apply everything that was on there? I saw that happen a lot with the NIST CSF. I see that happen a lot with ISO 27000. I had a client that we were working with that actually told me, he's like, we're going to pursue ISO 27000 certification. And I was like, great, what business area are you certifying? The entire organization. No, that is stupid. I had to go to a Dale Carnegie class after that to learn not to tell clients that their ideas are stupid. But it is. A lot of the times we rush headlong in with our checklist out of Excel and think that's going to solve the problem. I don't know how many times I've seen organizations that have done this and they fail to tailor it to their environment. Not every control is actually applicable. If it's not applicable, doesn't apply to you, you don't have to worry about it. But unfortunately, a lot of them turn around and do. Another checklist, another checkbox, another problem. The benefit of having an architecture is that it'll address the majority of the compliance frameworks for you automatically. Now, we've got your blinky box, deep learning, artificial intelligence machine. A lot of organizations chase the shiny, right? Oh, it's new, it's great. Right now, everybody's chasing the AI dragon, right? My wife of 23 years, whom I love, came up to me and said, I want to buy this spice rack. And I'm looking at it, and it's like this 100 different spices. It's AI enabled. It's got machine learning. And I'm like, hun, we've been together over 20 years. You have used the same 7 spices since day one. And she's like, no, I use 8. I said, yes, because I asked that you add paprika every now and then. Having an AI-enabled spice rack, what is it going to do for us? You know, historically, I think about this in the enterprise where it's like, oh, we've got this great new thing, let's use it. I want to keep that momentum going, but let's use it in the right way. Because if we don't do it correctly, we're going to forget about it. I mean, for all the love of all that is holy, we have a hard enough time patching our existing systems we know about. But when's the last time that anybody patched their Polycom or their Samsung Smart TV or their Xerox printer, network-based printer? I can almost guarantee that nobody's thinking about them if we are aware of them. So again, let's keep the momentum that the workforce has about bringing in new technology, but let's do it in a sound way that actually delivers value. I could be wrong, right? We have a lot of programs that fall subject to this. It's great that new technology is out there. It's not going to fix all the problems. There is no silver bullet. Silver bullets work great against werewolves, and when was the last time we saw a werewolf? I love seeing organizations that when we're working with them, they pour a lot of money into their tools, and they say, yeah, we're buying, this, the best of breed here, we're doing this. Great, you got a great procurement program. Procurement programs don't translate to security, though. You can spend a lot of money on some really great tools, but if your staff doesn't have the ability to use them, what is the value that you're actually seeing? When we talk a lot about enterprise training around some of these tools that they're bringing in, I have had executives, C-suite members that have made statements like, oh, well, they can train themselves on YouTube. True, they could, and your cardiothoracic surgeon or your oncologist that you're going to can do the same thing. Are you okay with that? Well, no, that's different. Really? Why? You can spend a lot of money buying a lot of tools. I can buy you the best. Any woodworkers in here? Anybody? Nobody? One? I can buy you a saw stop, but if you don't know how to use that table saw, is it going to provide you any value? I can give you like one of the best hammers in the world, but if you don't know how to swing it and do it right, you're not going to be able to do anything. Same thing when we look at making our investments. One of the big foundational fails, no clear architecture. So we have a system, you know that and I love the shadow IT folks that try to manage everything. But when you bolt things on, it doesn't go well. So, we know that we log on. For some reason, I'm having massive, there we go. Let's see now. There. All right. Because technology hates me this morning. So we know that we log on. We know that we're most likely going through somebody's, I am not having a good day today. Go through somebody's firewall, go to a data center somewhere. Of course, it's going to be in the cloud. Actually, that cloud is hosted out of the country of Palau because somebody in Bing County thought that was a good idea. We know that there is some type of information. There's a cloud account somewhere that will manage that for us. And that belongs to Dave, but Dave hasn't been employed now for a couple of years. And we all know that this is operating as intended, right? If you don't know why a service is at a particular location, if you don't know why a certain technology was implemented and introduced to your enterprise, why is it there? Run and find the answers. This is going to agitate me to no end. It is the week of technology for Ed, I will tell you that. Let's see if this goes. Technology really hates me today. There we go. This is actually from a quote-unquote enterprise architect. At least that's what their title was. This is all that they had that was their architecture, which brings a lot of questions into play. The scary part is that senior management bought off that this was their architecture. And I was asking questions like, well, what does this do? Well, it provides services. That was the actual answer. It provides services. What service does it provide? Well, it helps the business. Okay, what does it help the business do? Well, this is when the excuses started. I inherited it from somebody else. And that became what I call my Calgon day. As long as when we say Calgon, we're talking about Pappy Van Winkle being the solution. A lot of organizations, as it turns out, don't understand technology. And I fear a lot of people in IT use that to their benefit to baffle leadership with the proverbial bullshit. Smoke, mirrors, and a firewall. Instead of being able to clearly define what the solution is that they were paying money for, this architect couldn't actually articulate what it was, what capability, what services, what business need was actually being fulfilled. Well, if you are an architect, you have a responsibility, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, that you should be addressing that. So let's talk about some of the values of security architecture. Being able to answer 4 fundamental questions. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing them the right way? Are we doing them well? And most importantly, are we getting value and benefit from them? What we did with this in context of cybersecurity is to integrate the two so that way we could help answer those questions. That's the intent of the entire architecture. It is a value-focused architecture to be able to answer some key business questions. You know, the business that keeps us employed, that pays our checks, that allows us to keep creditors from calling us every single day about why we haven't paid our cable bill, to be able to answer them for the organization. Again, one of the biggest issues that I've seen is technology sprawl within an organization, loss of control of that technology, and ultimately it's because of the fact that we've not thought through that results in our organizations making the news and not in a good way. They get popped for ransomware, they get exploited. You know, we used to have this romantic vision that the criminal syndicates were like crafting 0 days in their basements, that they were, you know, going out of their way, they were doing like the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible things. The reality of it nowadays is they are just logging in through the front door, and we're allowing that. So what actually is this FESA thing that we're talking about? So we talked about some of the bad things. So when we started developing it, let me go back a number of decades on this one. My grandmother used to make me read Kipling. Anybody know Kipling? Kipling. Kipling had the serving honest men, right? Who, where, when, why, what, and how. This is very practical in application for a lot of organizations. SABSA, the Sherwood Applied Business Security Architect Institute, built this as their foundation of being able to answer those questions. I took it from them, trimmed it down a bunch to make it to the very fundamental. So when we look at what the foundational enterprise security architecture actually is, we condensed it to make it usable for organizations of any and all size as a method to allow organizations, enterprises of small size, medium size, to be able to inform their business decision capabilities. So one of the first things that we did is we said, okay, first thing that an architect needs to know, the business context. At this layer, it sets the stage for everything else we do. From there, we move to the information layer, because as it turns out, information is what our organizations actually live on. If you lose access to data and information, your business can come to a grinding halt real quick, right? Is that a good thing? No. Then we looked at the applications, because that's what our business users rely on, those systems, to be able to move information and data from one point to another in order to complete their jobs throughout the day. The reason why they're there is to deliver a service to the customers that will allow and enable the organization to achieve its strategic goals and objectives. They do that from a technology perspective. This is where we start hitting in with the applications. Then we go to the supporting technology. This can be physical boxes, virtualization, cloud-based, doesn't matter. However, we need to consider this. This helps us secure our technology at this layer. We can identify what potential controls need to be put in place, where the potential choke points are, where data is flowing, based upon the understanding of the applications. From there, physical. Now, I know a lot of us are still focused on, well, Ed, post-pandemic, we moved a lot virtual, and we moved from data center to cloud. You still have physical elements. As long as you have end users, you will have a physical element, whether that's a data center on-prem, whether that is a mobile user's laptop that they leave in the back of an airline or a taxi, doesn't matter. We need to account for it. If we don't, it becomes problematic. Our next layer is the people. Those individuals who have the ability to, by virtue of doing their job, bring in tremendous amounts of risk to the enterprise. Oop, wrong way. After the human layer, people layer, management's going to want to have the assurance that their investments are actually answering those 4 questions. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing them well, the right way? And are we getting an actual return on our investment? So we need to be able to provide an assurance, whether we're working with a third party, whether we follow the 3 lines of defense or the lines of defense model. We need to be able to provide the sufficient information that we know what we're doing and that we are operating in a secure, private, and compliant manner. Finally, we have the services and capabilities that security should be providing the organization. Some of the basic services, incident response, because bad things are going to happen. Change management, because if something changes, we need to know about it. And as it turns out, if you make a change in most organizations these days, it's what I like to refer to as that butterfly effect. I made a change to the cafeteria menuing system and allowed IP any from anybody outside of our organization. Guess where the attack vector is that the adversary is going to come through next? All the fun and the excitement. So at the security service layer, this is where we bring in all the different things, skills and capabilities. It never ceases to amaze me how many executives put a lot of faith in IT that we're just going to know how to do something. I've spent 3.5 decades in this industry. I have a well-rounded background, but I can guarantee that there are still things, and I will openly admit this, that I don't know. I know network forensics, but not cloud forensics. I know how to design a system. I don't know how to write an application in Golang or Rust. But our executives actually believe that IT is going to be able to figure it out. Now, this may not be bad or as impactful in a large enterprise, but think about the medium-sized enterprises that may have 1 or 2 people in IT. I had a client we worked with. They were located across 7 different states. They had 250 employees. They had 1 IT person. Uno. We were talking about change management and patch management as we were getting ready to migrate some of their systems to the cloud, and their IT person was like, yep, we are patched current. And it was true in their Massachusetts office where he was at. All those systems in Massachusetts, all 18 of them, were patched current. The ones at the corporate office in New Orleans, no. We had vulnerabilities that existed on their network that, I kid you not, were old enough to drink. They had a different definition, their IT had a different definition of what current meant. Current for operations. We found out that they did not have any method for tracking changes. They didn't have a ticketing system that allowed them to track the problems that they were having. And they had many. What security services can the IT staff competently and confidently deliver to the enterprise? It's one of the key things. Ultimately, our goal was that the foundational enterprise security architecture will foster and bring clarity. It'll drive those discussions around, identifying where the blind spots are within the organization. It'll help justify making some of those decisions around budgeting and whatnot. So the 7 layers in a service, again, 8 layers in total, but to get to that service, you have to do and get the first 7 correct. So we break it down. These are the different areas within the individual layers that we collectively felt were the most important aspects to consider that needed to be addressed for the enterprise. Now, this walks through the entirety of the program. Each layer highlights the key concepts that are required to be part of any type of IT program. Small, medium, extremely geographic diverse. This is the minimum baseline. Now again, when we talk about this, it's important to know what it is as well as what it is not. It's not a compliance checklist by any sense of the imagination. I don't think there is a self-respecting regulatory body out there that would say, this is what you should have, because they're all pushing their own. What we're saying is, at a bare minimum, this is the things that you need to operate and function as a business reliably and have confidence in the capabilities of your security and IT team. Again, the other aspect is, I didn't want FESA to be viewed as a checklist for compliance, because I have this perspective that compliance is doing the bare minimum to avoid a willful negligence lawsuit, and that's not where I want to be at. I don't want to have that bar that low. I will tell you, from the way that it's been used with some of our clients and some of those who have adopted it, it does help them pass audits. It helps them to have the business conversation about how risks are being managed and why a certain requirement or control does not need to be, but it's also not magic. FESA is not about buying tools. It's about being able to justify and trace back why an investment in security is actually being made, why it's important to choose this solution. Again, I see a lot of organizations that buy that magic quadrant tool set, but they have people that are in that lower left-hand corner when it comes to skills, competencies, and capabilities, because they never consider their corporate culture or their skills, competencies of their staff. It is not a tech solution by any sense of the means. It's not just a bunch of cyber stuff. There is a technology cyber component. However, it is tied back to the business side. It's not for mega corporations. It's not intended for those who, have a CISO. It's actually for those of us who have worked in those sole sysadmin roles where security was thrown at us and said, figure it out. It's for the accidental security architect, the individual who's been there and through attrition has wound up being responsible for the entirety of their organization. It's for the startup organization that is figuring out that, HIPAA applies to us. What do we need to do? These are the things that FESA strives to solve. It's not magic. I had one of our folks come back and they're like, this is great. This is actually putting it very simplistically. It helps me have those conversations with my leadership. It's like this magical thing. And I'm like, no. It is not magic. It's not going to fix a broken culture. It's not going to instantly align security and technology and the business together. It's going to require a lot of work to get things done. At the end of the day, our goal is that the architecture answers the who, where, when, why, what, and how. When we talk about the why, these are the business goals, the purpose and intent behind why these systems and why the organization is in place and why we need to secure it. We talk about the types of information. We talk about, we got to protect it from a technology and physical aspect. We talk about these things, but we do so in terms that the business can actually understand. So, our approach was to take people per people, process, and technology in that order for a reason, because if you have the right people who are doing the right things, the technology is going to be configured properly. If it's not done in that order, it's going to become problematic. Most of us probably automatically think about technology first, though, when we're looking at solutions. FESA tries to alleviate and stop that from happening. Again, we don't want to talk about the blinky boxes. We don't want to talk the issues. The hierarchy of this is important. Get the people and processes right, everything else will fall into place. When we look at the people aspect, this is who our customers are. This is who our stakeholders are. These are the folks that are actually enabling us to achieve the strategic goals and objectives of our organizations, whether we're big or small. This is also one of our biggest assets that we have, because by virtue of them doing their job, they're bringing risk in, whether that's through poor hygiene and practices when it comes to online activities, or bringing in new technology unvetted, unapproved, unknown. When we talk about the processes, again, effective and efficient processes ensure that you will have a consistency and a level of quality that is acceptable to the organization. If you don't have well-defined processes or processes that are broke and you attempt to automate them, congratulations, you're going to experience a whole lot of failure real quick. Nothing can outline an ineffective or broken process like automation can, right? If you thought it was bad dealing with 100 issues in a month, imagine dealing with 10,000 in a matter of minutes. We want efficiency, yes, but we want ultimate goal of all of our processes should be focused on the quality aspects. Moving into the last area, the last pillar of this concept of the technology. Where are we going to focus? What are we going to configure? How do we enforce controls? The key understanding here is that we have to understand that the reason why that technology exists in the beginning is to support the processes and the people, not to replace them. This is one of the things, I was on a panel Wednesday night with some folks in New Zealand and Auckland. We were talking about the rush to replace workforce members with AI, and how we have to put the foot down to say, one, you're losing a lot of tribal knowledge when you replace. AI cannot replace the workforce. It can augment, it can gain efficiencies, but at the end of the day, if you would replace your workforce with AI, you're going to have massive problems. And problems that you don't even know of yet. Why isn't the supply line running? Well, we let go of all of our people. The robots were going to do it. The other aspect when it comes to technology that I see a lot of organizations do, big and small, is they buy things that their people don't know how to use. They'll buy new technology because it looks cool, or they heard somebody talking about it, and they have zero intent to send their folks to training. They're just going to slap it in. They're going to have some high-level consultants come in and do the initial tuning and walk away. That's what we call a liability. I've seen an organization do this out on the West Coast, hospital. They slapped in a data loss prevention platform so that way they could address HIPAA requirements. Nobody was really assigned. The privacy office was focused on patient information. Well, there turned out to be like 1,600 alerts over the span of 6 months where there were multiple sexual harassment cases going on, but because it wasn't patient-related, privacy wasn't doing anything about it. That's what we call in the industry and on the legal side a Willy Wonka golden ticket moment, because the organization was aware of the sexual harassment and did nothing about it. And when one of the individuals found out, that snowballed and went sideways really quick for that organization. Every technology we have is great, But buying technology because it's the high-end Magic Quadrant, this is sort of like buying a Lamborghini and driving it on the Gene Snyder at 200 miles an hour. It's not going to end well, is it? Maybe after they fix their problems. When these work together, when they're considered and they're thought out, it comes in and it can be a well-orchestrated service and capability that is delivered to the business. If it's not thought of, it's problematic. So what is the secret sauce? It's really, really simple. It's a mindset. It's an approach. It is not, I believe we went out of our way to be highly tool agnostic, where it doesn't matter what tools you have in your environment, we just provide guidance and recommendations. That's what it ultimately comes down to. Predominantly because we want to make sure we have the quality, it's repeatable. And for me, one of the things I learned years ago about having a well, solid, repeatable program is it allows me to go on vacation uninterrupted. I don't get the phone call because people don't know. They can automatically go and find out and get the answer themselves. Again, a lot of what we do with regards to the framework is connect those dots into areas of risk management, integration, not just implementation. A lot of us are familiar with being able to implement technology, but how many of us are successful at integrating with the organization? Implementation's easy, integration, not so much. Being able to provide that oversight and answer those 4 questions is important. Again, being able to move forward and being able to address so that way security stops being the shop of no and being more of an enabler for the organization. We're not a roadblock. We should never be viewed as a roadblock. We should allow the organization to accelerate as fast as they need to and be able to slow down when they absolutely are required to. If the organization wants to pursue a new action, great. We're going to help you understand how to do so in a sound manner and not expose yourself unnecessarily. We bring in risk management, knowing what we are doing, why it's important that we are recommending this. We know that we can't protect everything. We have to balance it accordingly. Not all IT assets or business processes are equal, right? If you've ever gone through a business continuity program assessment, you'll know that real quick when HR is like, we're the most important business unit in the organization. And then they get shocked when you point out that, no, people only care about you about twice a month, maybe. Why twice? That's when we get paid. If we guard our toothbrushes and diamonds with equal zealousness, we will lose fewer toothbrushes, but more diamonds. Understand what and why information needs to be protected. Again, when we talk about the implementation and integration, implementation's easy. Integration is about getting the security stuff that we do to actually work with the business, work with that organization, making them play nice together. Integration also results in not operating in a silo. That's kind of important, right? Does anybody like working in a silo or a vacuum? I know most of us in IT, we got into IT because we didn't like working with people, as evidenced by how spread out everybody is. Nobody wants to be like right next to each other. Again, when we talk about governance, this is proving that we're not just winging it. We actually have a plan. We're actually trying to align and work with the organization and answer questions for them that they may have. How do we get there? Ultimately, what this translates to is, where we're going to wind up next year for budget purposes. Again, we want to be able to connect the dots. FESA allows us to map the controls and the investments back to actual risk to the organization. However, I want to make sure and call out movement is not the same as momentum. Buying tools isn't progress if you're still insecure. Because if it's your security program doesn't support the business, it's not really security, is it? It's just a cost center, it's an overhead, and it's expense. It's not an enabler for the organization. So FESA establishes some core goals. We look at the business aspect. We start with the why. Again, What are we here to do? What do our customers and stakeholders expect? What keeps us operating and generating revenue and producing value? We then move into the risk aspect, where this is one of those things that I see it more with small and medium-sized businesses where they still think of technical risk as being an IT problem. It's no longer an IT problem. Every organization is at its core now an IT company that provides a service or good to a client. You take IT out of the equation, that organization is going to have some significant issues in their ability to deliver. We talk about that we are enabling the organization and not being the organization of no. Again, one of the key things is traceability. This is something that a lot of the frameworks, the enterprise security frameworks and IT frameworks will do, is trace back to the business driver for why something exists inside the organization. This is something we found critical because I can guarantee you, you're going to be asked, why did we spend all this money on this thing? We need to be able to answer that and answer that effectively. Again, architecture is meant to provide a capability for us in security. That capability is reducing risk that is acceptable to the organization, getting the residual risk to a level that makes sense. And we do this through business alignment, structured security, supporting the decision-making and prioritization process, providing the associated assurance and scalability for the enterprise. Some of the red flags associated that we've seen. So a lot of us, we already know our architecture is less than stellar. It's going to be a result in passion of love by doing it. However, one of the key things that we can see is if you come in and security is viewed as the department or no, or what I like to call the fun police, we need to make sure we work to realign the organization. The shiny object syndrome, again, this is common, everything from AI-powered to blockchain contracts, oh my God. Quantum-resistant widget of the future. I had a client that we were working with, they're a small manufacturing firm, regional. They were asking about if they need to be concerned about quantum decryption of current state encryption. And they're like, I heard this thing about harvest now and decrypt later, and I'm like, yeah. And if you were a government, you might want to be concerned about that. If you were a large financial services organization, you're really going to want to be concerned about that. A small regional manufacturer, not so much. We're still a couple of years out. We have a little bit of lead time, and we know with the natural evolution of encryption, as these systems become mainstream, the encryption is going to evolve. Yes, AES 256 is going to be broken when quantum computing comes in. Well, here's a tip. Does anybody know why we don't use the cipher, Caesar cipher anymore? Or DES? It's the natural evolution of encryption. Now, if I'm a large financial institution, maybe I'm a multi-trillion-dollar geographically dispersed, absolutely I am. I'm going to be concerned about that. If I'm handling national secrets and intelligence, absolutely. Again, when we get into the aspects of, what is it that we're protecting, it never ceases to amaze me how many organizations really don't know where their crown jewels are actually at. I had a client we were working with out of Pennsylvania. Their DoD contracts, he was touting that they made 80% profitability on. The 3 contracts that I looked at equaled about $20 million, so I'm doing the immediate math. CMMC requirements, some of the CU, CTI standards that were out there required that they invest probably about $500,000 to correct problems that they had, like removing Huawei cameras from their facility. But I mean, it made a lot of sense, and immediately started pushing back. And I'm like, this is one of your crown jewels. Why aren't you protecting it? I mean, I'm doing some simple math. 80% of 20 million just from 3 contracts that I saw, And those weren't all of them. If that was actually the case, maybe we protect the crown jewels. Just saying. When we talk about shadow IT and architecture, again, I see this a lot more in the lower end, smaller organizations where everybody is an IT guru and they know what they're doing. Setting secure or compliance as the strategy for security. You can be compliant and still get compromised. I'm going to just throw that spoiler alert out there for you. I have had clients, in fact, one of the clients we worked with, they were a healthcare provider for specific demographics. They had gotten compromised, and their executive asked me, well, we have a SOC too. How did we get compromised? Because there's a big difference between being compliant and choosing what controls apply to you and not. IR being the fire drill. Every single time there's an incident, nobody seems to know what to do. You're repeating the same incident over and over again. This is a big red flag. The annual training that everyone ignores. You know, why did we lose $1 million? You know, or asking the office manager, well, why did you transfer $1 million? Well, because our CFO told me to. Did you not watch the impact or the training? You mean that PowerPoint thing that you guys send out once a year? You know, I love the fact I had a client who was actually excited. They're like, we train our employees for 2 hours a year on cyber. And I was like, cool. How many hours a year are you being attacked? Spoiler alert, 8,760 hours per year that you're being attacked. And he's like, you can't work that much in a year. Yuri over in Moscow absolutely can. He's got a team, and their entire team is to fleece you and take your money from you. Again, having a lot of documentation that has pretty pictures, but no substance. If I see another person who claims to be an architect that they position themselves and say, look at my Visio documents, I'm going to probably throat punch them that day. Visio's not architecture. Might be a data flow diagram at best, but that's just part of it. That's like saying going to Kroger is getting a 7-course meal, right? I mean, all the stuff is there. You just have to put it together. If it doesn't have any substance, what is the value? So as we're getting ready to close up, because I think I've got 5 minutes on a delayed time, or am I over? Yeah, he thinks I'm good. Thank you, I appreciate being told that I'm good. So how do you get it? So when we put it together, again, it's 8 specific components, 7 layers that all lead to being able to provide effective, competent, and reliable security services to the organization. Now, when I say we put this little thing together, that's a little bit of a stretch because it's over 100 and some pages in length. One of the things that we added in is a lot of information that was ready to go right out of the bat. So if you need a policy for acceptable use, for example, we provide a generic version of that. If you need a process workflow for change management, it's in there. We also include business cases. I don't know if business cases are still, how many of you actually still do business cases? Kinda. How many of you are saying kinda because your boss is sitting right next to you? And I do. No. This is a lost art, and this is a very, very valuable tool that I think as a security professional we neglect, because this is where we document why we're making certain decisions, right? What we were considering, what we were asking for, all that. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and close out. I'm going to open it up for questions. Feel free to, hitting the wrong way. There we go. Feel free to click on the link. It's perfectly safe. You can do the same thing with the QR code. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to the folks. I think we have some folks. Are you here for the next talk? Or you just came in late or needed a place to chat? Is that it? I'm looking right at you, yes. Yes! There you go. Are you comfy? No. It's an all happy place here. Not comfortable now, are you? All right, with that, I want to thank everybody for attending. I'll be around. I'm going to be bouncing up to another conference I've got up in B-Sides Bloomington scheduled their conference the same day as Louisville Metro InfoSec. Kind of a night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.